Soccer fans, to another episode of the Pitch, an American Soccer Podcast. We are glad that you're joining us once again via podcast, via YouTube, via the web, however you listen to us as we talk soccer and cover all things MLS, CL, and here on our show. I'm one of your hosts, Nick Pateras, joined by my good host, Mike Guglielmi. Mike, another great weekend of soccer action and a lot of things to talk about. What are you looking forward to in this episode?
Yeah, it was lots of fun this weekend. Lots of great games. Definitely looking forward to talk about those games as well. Some interesting U.S. youth national team news as well. So lots of good stuff to talk about here as far as content for soccer.
And if you, our listeners and viewers, want to join the conversation, follow us on Twitter at SOP Soccer, on Facebook at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, on YouTube, do a search for, of course, Sons of a Pitch Soccer. And we'd like to thank all of our YouTube followers. We've got now over 200 some followers. We're approaching 300. Mike, you're running a little contest that you put out that has to do with YouTube. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and as well follow us on one of the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. With that, if we reach our goal of 1,000 YouTube subscribers by the MLS All-Star Game, we will put out a $250 Visa gift card or 2 tickets to any regular season MLS game, no airfare included, and 2 SOP Soccer t-shirts to wear at that game. So we will draw one random follower for that prize once we reach that 1,000 subscribers on YouTube.
We want to thank everyone who's already joined the conversation on Twitter. Matchday Takeaway, Inter Miami, Argentina, Ben Rigetti, Brian Whipple, US Soccer Chat, who every Thursday afternoon use the hashtag US Soccer Chat, and you can join in the conversation with their show, our show, about a dozen or so other podcasters, YouTubers, soccer people who are talking all things USMNT. Thanks to Liam, Jesus MS, No Other Club SKC, Mark Kennedy, and Pancho Rodriguez. Thank you for your follows, as well as Ryan Gillespie, Eric S., Rocky Does It All, and the dozens or so of others who have recently followed us along on YouTube. We appreciate that, and we appreciate you letting us do what we do. Mike, you're the guy with all the picks, the contests, the fun stuff. You also set up a Predict 6 league. I was a little late to the party, so don't let my 0 points fool you. I just, for some reason, it didn't accept my picks for the first couple of weeks. So my bad on that. But Mike, tell the viewers about that one.
Yeah, so we started up a Predict 6 league, so that new game there on MLSsoccer.com where there's 6 games you have to pick the winner of or a draw, and then also pick the prop bets for each one of those. And if you get, they're all weighted by different points, and the most points, if you get all the picks correct, you have a chance to win at $50,000 from MLS and MGM, BetMGM. If you get the highest point total for the week, you are eligible for $500. So we did a league there. We've got 23 members as of right now, and it's really shaping up to be pretty good. And check out on YouTube, probably on Thursday afternoons or Friday mornings, anywhere in that time frame, I'll be putting out my Predict 6 picks for that week. Last week didn't go so hot. Next week, I plan on it being a little bit better.
And even if you haven't joined the way they weight the picks, more points for things less likely to happen, anyone who starts week 3, 4, 5, 6 coming up, you can easily jump right back on in and compete on the leaderboard side of things there. And then finally, one other programming announcement. As we are expanding our YouTube coverage, as we are expanding the types of things that we're doing and talking about here, we do have sponsorships available. So if your business or if you just as a fan want to have a sponsorship or a plug for something that you've been working on, reach out to us, email us podcast@sonsofapitchsoccer.com, or shoot us a direct message on Twitter, and we can set something up for you. So we're growing, our listenership is growing, and so is all our content. Speaking of that content, it's time to dive right in. One of the things that we were most happy to hear about on Twitter, Joe Fala, who we did an interview with back before the MLS Super Draft. He is the only D3 player to be in the MLS Super Draft this year, coming out of Ramapo College in New Jersey. He holds all sorts of records at that college, and even though he wasn't selected in the Super Draft, he went on trial with the Red Bulls, signed a deal with Red Bulls too, and is now starting for them as their center back, I believe. They're grooming him as a center back, even though we know his versatility and that he's played all over. I mean, for a guy that holds a goal scoring record at a college, and the Red Bulls want to put him at center back, like that tells you a little something about the kind of player that Joe Fala is. So we're just thrilled to see how his career has continued to progress. Go back and find that interview in our archives and some of our prior episodes, and you get to hear just the kind of work ethic and kind of the great guy that Joe is. So we look forward to following his career with the Red Bulls, and we're looking forward to seeing him in the MLS someday soon. So I know, Mike, you got to talk to Joe quite a bit even after the interview. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, he played extremely well in that first game. Unfortunately, it was a 1-0 loss to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. It was a great game. Joe was fantastic at the back, really versatile. He actually moved up forward to the front at the end of the game when they were chasing the goal. So it was pretty interesting to see how they were utilizing him. The coach, John Wallenick, had some great words of praise for Joe Fala. It was also pretty cool to hear some of our listeners and viewers. I'm sure you'd watch MLS Extra Time with Andrew Weavy and Kalen Carr and some of those MLS guys. Well, they did the broadcast on ESPN Plus for that game, and it was pretty funny hearing them talk about Joe. They were talking about him quite a bit, and his size and coming from Ramapo College and the All-American and all that kind of stuff. And the Red Bulls are really, really high on him. So I think how can you not be high on this kid? He starts out as an undrafted, free agent from a D3 school, the only D3 kid in the draft, and now he's starting for the USL side. I mean, it's not like I was expecting him, honestly, to maybe get a spot with the Red Bulls too. And if he did, he'd be, probably a, third option or, coming off the bench fighting to get in that 18. But the kid's starting, and he looked really good in that first game. So really excited about Joe Fala and his career. Hopefully, and, we're kind of thinking about planning a little road trip maybe to go see him at some point this season for a USL game. So, Nick, did you get a chance to watch any of that one?
I didn't get a chance to watch the game, but, I looked over actually the Red Bulls MLS roster, and they could use some depth along their back line. Who knows how long Aaron Long is going to be around the MLS, and who knows if any injuries pop up. Joe Fala could be a guy that if he gets some time with the Red Bulls 2 squad and kind of learns the Red Bull way, so to speak, or how they want to play tactics, formations, things of that nature, and continues to prove himself on the training squad. Like it wouldn't surprise me if you see him maybe get some call-ups to the senior team throughout the season, depending on injuries and roster spots. So thrilled to see where Joe's at. Excited to see where he goes from now, and again, wishing you all the best, Joe. It was great to have you on our show, a month or so ago, and we look forward to hopefully talking to you again sometime soon. Now that you're hitting the big time, they'll have to work it through your agent, I guess. So we'll see how that goes. Along those same lines, though, there has been a rash of injuries throughout the MLS that are already starting to affect the season for a lot of teams. So I just wanted to pull up kind of the MLS injury report, and according to MLSsoccer.com, this was last updated March 6th. So it didn't have most of the injuries over the weekend, like we saw Ola Kamara go down. Who knows how long he'll be out for. But like looking at some of these big teams, Mike, Atlanta's without Joseph Martinez for the season probably, Miles Robinson and Franco Escobar. The Crew already have Waylon Francis, kind of, I'd say more of a depth piece at D, who's out. DC United, who is supposed to compete in the East, lost Paul Arriola. Higuain's already out. Ulises Segura is questionable with a groin injury. You know how those always linger. Ola Kamara, they did list Ola Kamara's injury. Joe Mora, like DC's got a rash of early injuries. And then in keeping with the East Coast, we got Luis Caicedo and Alex Butner from New England who are out. Again, Caicedo, who's gotten a lot of minutes for that team. Butner probably more of a depth piece there. So you're seeing a lot of Eastern Conference teams who are already at a disadvantage. How do you think this is going to affect the play of these teams? How do you think it's going to affect the way the standings shake out, or is it still too early?
It's way too early to really have a huge effect on the standings. I mean, obviously the Joseph Martinez injury could have an effect on the standings, but I think Atlanta will probably find a way to cover up his loss. But it's only 2 matches in. Give it some time. It is a little bit concerning that there's so many injuries though already. You've got, just the list goes on and on of all these players that are out, and it is only week 2. It was an extended off season this year, right? They had a longer off season than normal seasons. So it's a little concerning from that standpoint. What's going on with these MLS teams? Is it the training staffs? Is it the medical staffs of these teams? Can they be learning something from these other clubs? And everybody says, well, they're playing so many games. They're, all these different competitions. Well, yeah, you got the Leagues Cup, you've got US Open Cup, you've got CONCACAF Champions League for some of the teams. But you look at over in these big 5 leagues in Europe, and obviously there's a huge difference with the salary cap and no salary cap and all that. But these guys, they're playing games, 3 games a week, every week, right? There's a game on Wednesday, a game on Saturday or Sunday. There's different cup competitions. How many cup competitions are there in England? Right? There's the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, the Friendly Cup, the this, that, and other thing, Community Shield, everything you can think of. So I think it's a little concerning from that standpoint, but really a lot of injuries that are kind of surprising on the list as well. Some guys who don't usually have a lot of injury history on this list. So be interesting to see what happens, but I don't think it's too big of a deal yet.
Great. And I agree with you. It is pretty early, but there are a lot of guys who are out early. Maybe other teams middle of the table can steal a few points and secure a playoff spot. I mean, games and the points matter as much as they do in March as they do in August, September. So maybe some teams will be looking back and saying, oh, man, if we only had Joseph for one more game, or, oh, man, if Ladero didn't have to sit out as a precaution for a couple games in March, maybe we'd be all right. But we'll see what happens coming up. Next headline I wanted to bring up, Mike, is this is something I saw on Twitter that I think merits a conversation regarding the expansion clubs of Nashville and Miami. Both of them are 0-2 with 2 losses. And, if you continue our joke that Chicago is just an expansion team, new stadium, new coach, new roster, new logo, Chicago has a draw and a loss. So the expansion teams have not gotten off to a great start after 2 weeks. But what I found interesting is the vibe around Inter Miami is still so positive. Like, it's all right. It's okay. We played good games. We got our first goal. We had to play LAFC and DC, 2 competitors. We're going to be just fine. And then you've got Nashville, who's like, oh, man, we don't have any goal-scoring options. Like, thankfully, Zimmerman got the first one off of a set piece, the toe poke. It feels so negative in Nashville versus the vibe in Miami, even though the rosters are kind of similarly situated and the records are about the same. Like, do you have that same feeling, or is it still both teams can make the playoffs or both teams can fall on their face type of scenario?
Yeah, I think both teams are going to have a hard time making the playoffs. Got to remember, they are expansion teams, right? And minus the success of Atlanta and LAFC over the past few seasons, usually expansion teams struggle. That's how it is. And especially when you start getting into, the more teams that are in the league, like Major League Baseball. When there's an expansion team in Major League Baseball in a 30-team league, those expansion teams struggle for a while. So I think you're gonna see these guys struggle more than Atlanta and LAFC did. Sounders back in the day were kind of an exception. Same with Chicago Fire right in '98. But I think they just need to, relax, take it game by game. They'll get there. Nashville will get there. I think there's a little bit more optimism in Miami than in Nashville, just based off of the ownership and the hype, right? I mean, there was more hype for Beckham and his team, and it's been around longer. They've been waiting longer. The rumors of, is Cristiano Ronaldo coming to play for Inter Miami? That kind of stuff definitely helps that fan base be more confident in the results. They are pretty similar teams on and off the field. I think when their one striker gets healthy, their Carranza, I believe it is, if he gets healthy,
that's him.
yeah, then that'll change things up for them. Nashville as well. I think they just need to they'll get it rolling here. It just takes some time. Hopefully they don't start rolling this week against Toronto. But well, I'm sure they will, because that's my luck.
Probably. Yeah, it seems like Miami's ownership and management and marketing really put the expectations on the players of, we're making the playoffs and we're going to compete season one. Where in Nashville, it was, let's build our culture, let's build the fan base, let's build the stadium, let's get all that in place, and then if we have a solid roster to begin with and lay the foundation for future success. So you almost kind of have that Atlanta-Minnesota dichotomy once again, and we'll see how it plays out. It's hard, though, to do the Minnesota slow build in today's MLS, because you need to keep your fans engaged. You need to have the money coming in. And if you are clubs that don't have a specific soccer-specific stadium, you got to build some buzz and make some deals with the local government officials here to make sure you get what's needed for the club. So all that taken into account, I think I'm gonna stick to my guns. I think it's too early to panic for either team, and I also think but at the same time, if you're Miami, you got to figure, well, we didn't want to start 0-2. And I know they said in the broadcast, Diego Alonso said it'll take about 6 games to really see what he's got and what formations he wants to use with what players. So if you see Miami start off with 6 losses, I guess that's their evaluation period, but they're definitely not going to be happy about it.
Yeah, for sure.
Next kind of headline we wanted to talk about, Mike, this was something that you brought to my attention, since you know all things north of the border. Victor Wanyama goes to Montreal from Tottenham. Fill us in on the details of this, and what do you think the impact that this is going to have as a player on the team, and both for the league as a whole?
Yeah, he's a central defensive midfielder. They signed him to a 3-year deal. He's pretty injury prone. He's 28 years old, so he's in the prime of his career. Surprising move. There's a lot of chatter. I was listening to a podcast on the way home from work the other day, and they were talking about it. And it's just interesting that I'm not really sure where why this guy was available to Montreal. You figure a guy like this probably would end up, there'd be interest in other places to go. Most, at 28 years old, guys don't go from Tottenham to MLS. So it's really surprising on that front. But I think it's the injury side of things. He has had some issues with that. So maybe going down a level to MLS and in a different type of environment, maybe it could be good for his career. And I'm sure Thierry Henry had something to do with this as well. So lots of talk on that front, but I think until the guy comes and plays and you can see him in action, that you really can't judge it. But one thing that does surprise me, though, is the position that this guy plays, right? He's a central defensive midfielder. They've got Samuel Piet back there. You figure they're probably going to go with 2 CDMs, but I would put Montreal as needing attack, not a central defensive midfielder. They need somebody that's going to fill in for, Piatti and can go up there with Rudy and Kyoto, who are good MLS vets, but not, great MLS names.
Yeah, I don't know if you can count on those guys for 30 games to be finding the back of the net. Yeah. The one thing about Wanyama that kind of stood out to me, he hasn't been playing for Tottenham that much this season. And Tottenham's had just a wild ride with Mourinho coming in and coaching them. They've had some bad losses. They've had some embarrassing losses. He's kind of embarrassed himself. So maybe Tottenham's like, okay, maybe we just need to move some guys around, maybe clear a few bucks off the books, or make room for some new signings. So when Wanyama to Montreal, especially as a CDM, central defensive midfielder, teams are looking for those right now. You saw the success Portland's had with Diego Chara there. Teams are starting to look abroad for for defenders. They're trying to get ahead of the curve, so to say, and not just keep signing young overseas striking talent to huge deals. So if this makes sense from a defensive perspective, it makes sense from a financial perspective. Do you know, did he get in on a TAM deal, or is he in on a DP deal with Montreal? Did you read that anywhere?
It's a DP deal. He was signed a DP deal. I'm about 99.9% sure.
And I think that would make sense on Transfer Market. They got him listed as 8.8 million, and that was just updated today, March 9th, according to that website. So,
Okay.
yeah, he's a DP midfielder who can come in, have an immediate impact. And to your point, Mike, he was quoted as saying, like, when Thierry Henry said he wanted me, I didn't have to think twice. So, absolutely, Henry is doing as much to recruit for Montreal as he is to actually coach him up. I think this is exactly what they need to help advance in CONCACAF Champions League. If they can get him, game fit right away, I'm sure he will be. But you're right, long term, they need an attacker. The league is about scoring goals. So we'll see if they can fill that position in. And have you heard anything if Montreal is going to actually try to sign some attack-minded players at some point? Like, is there any buzz going around?
Not that I'm aware of. And this one kind of came from left field as well. There wasn't a lot of rumors going on about this. It's not really the rumor mill season right now. So I think most people aren't looking for much right now. So you don't hear much. But nothing from the striker front or the forward front. But I'm sure they've got to do something. They've got to pick somebody up there if they want to compete and be an MLS Cup contention.
Absolutely. It's funny, though, to say, like, they need attackers when Rudy's got 3 goals in 2 games. So as much as I love watching Rudy play and find the back of the net, and, he had a highlight goal in week 1, and people were calling it the revenge game against Dallas when he put two up against Dallas. But I think over the course of a full season, especially given domestic cup play, and I don't know if Montreal was selected for Leagues Cup or any of those kind of exhibition-ish type games with Liga MX, but they're going to need depth. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Mike, here's kind of a fun headline that I got to see, and I thought of you right away because I know you were a huge fan of Sebastian Saucedo, formerly of RSL, aka Bofo Saucedo. This is just the fun stuff about being in America and being in the MLS. The Half Spaces podcast put out a tweet after Bofo Saucedo scored this amazing goal for his club down in Mexico. And they tweeted, so what was RSL doing with Bofo? I can't believe he's improved this much in that short a time. And he actually responded. Sebastian Saucedo responded by saying they weren't playing me.
Yeah.
So imagine that. Playing a talented striker does enough to develop him a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, the moments that we did get to see him in MLS, he was fantastic, and that's that warranted his sale to Pumas in at Liga MX, and he has definitely done some business down there. He's looking good, so that's pretty awesome that he actually replied to the tweet and was like, "Yeah, not playing me, that'll do it." Oh man,
so glad
especially with little emoji.
Was able to. Yeah, what's that, Mike?
With the little emoji there.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, glad Half Spaces was able to get that response out of them. The next couple things we're going to go international for here. We're going to go USMNT. We're going to go Olympic qualifying for. So this, if you haven't heard it, then you're not paying attention to USMNT soccer. Gio Reyna, son of Claudio Reyna, USMNT legend, who's overplaying in the Bundesliga right now, actually came out and said, I am going to play for the United States. There was some talk that he would possibly play for England, but I think that was just kind of manufactured talk by all the Berhalter haters, that he couldn't get the guys, or just haters of the USMNT in general. I mean, Gio Reyna grew up in the United States. His dad is a USMNT legend. He's kind of joined that wave of young Americans playing in the Bundesliga, and personally, I think he's tight with a lot of the U23, U17, and young national team players, and that's something that you want as a professional athlete playing for your nation. Like, you got your friends that you can travel abroad with and have success with. All of that, I never even knew this was a question, but apparently some people didn't think Gio Reyna was going to end up with the U.S. Mike, I don't know how closely you followed this story or what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah, I didn't really follow it much. I figured it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that he would play for the U.S. And now he's come out and said it to take all the drama out of it, and let's get him capped and get it over with.
Absolutely. And Berhalter has said that is going to call up Reyna for the friendlies against the Netherlands and against Wales at the end of this month. So keep on the lookout for those. And if you don't know who Gio Reyna is, go find his Bundesliga highlights. He's already had a couple just high-quality goals where he just takes on a defender, bends it beautifully to the far post. So look for those highlights. And then lastly, before we take a quick break here, we wanted to kind of go over the Olympic qualifying roster and see what stands out and what maybe we can expect from this. As you know, the U.S. has not qualified for the last two Olympics, and that takes a huge toll on building a soccer program because you don't get international experience. You don't get kind of away game experience, and you don't get all those extra games and practices that young players need to develop. Typically in the Olympics, you have U23 players and then maybe a couple national team regulars, just kind of depending on the stature of your country and how you want to build your roster. And honestly, you can kind of see the gap in talent in the United States. They lost out on 8 years of developing young international talent or young international play talent because they didn't make the world. My gosh, Mike, I can't. I'm so tongue-tied over this segment here. The U.S. lost 8 years of developing players, and then they don't qualify for the 2018 World Cup. And the biggest criticism was we relied on the old guard for too long.
Yeah.
Maybe if they make the Olympics, we have a couple more players who can step in and bring us over the qualifying bar. So looking ahead to Olympics, I mean, do you feel the same way? Do you feel it's opportunity wasted, or is it like, you know what, it really wasn't going to help the U.S. because we didn't have the players anyway, which is a criticism people have said.
Well, there's two kind of places that people, soccer fans, get their knowledge about these younger guys coming up and kind of the golden generations of these teams, right? It's either the Olympics or the U23 World Cup. It's one of those two. Those two tournaments are the biggest, and the Olympics, the U.S. hasn't been in. And they need to get there. I mean, you look at the women's team, they're guaranteed qualifiers every year. Why is the men's team not getting there and qualifying? All you got to do is make the final of this tournament to qualify. And so they should be getting there and not missing out on that opportunity to grow these younger kids at these really great experience. To go to the Olympics. One, you can say you're an Olympian. Two, you get to you learn a lot playing in a big time tournament like that. So it's definitely opportunity wasted. They need to get it done this time. And the roster that they have for that, the goalkeepers are Matt Freese from the Philadelphia Union, JT Marcinkowski from San Jose Earthquakes, and David Ochoa from Real Salt Lake. I don't really know much about those three guys as far as the goalkeepers go. Defenders, Reggie Cannon, who's had some USMNT senior team call-ups, Justin Glad, Chris Gloucester from PSV, Aaron Herrera from Salt Lake, Mark McKenzie of the Union, Eric Palmer Brown, formerly of Sporting Kansas City, now with Austria Wien. So a strong back line there. Nick, tell us about the midfielders and the forwards.
Sure. Well, you say you didn't know too much about the goalkeepers. I anticipate David Ochoa to be starting for them, and it's funny in looking at the roster. They said that I think RSL, Dallas, and there's one other club each have like 3 or 4 players on here. So you're seeing the influence that these academies have, especially the Dallas Academy, on the American soccer landscape. So to jump back into the midfielders, here's your household MLS name: Brendan Aronson of Philadelphia, Hassani Dotson, Minnesota, Richie Ledesma, PSV Eindhoven. The next big thing, right? A lot of people already want him to get senior team call-ups. Jordi Mihailovic, Chicago Fire, local guy. Paxton Pomykal of Dallas, Jackson Ewell of San Jose. This is where the U23 team is stacked. The midfield looks great. Granted, all of them but one are U.S. based, and a lot of people find that to be a disadvantage, that our young players aren't getting top flight experience overseas. But honestly, but it's funny to me because then in the same breath they're like, well, Richie Ledesma and Jordi Mihailovic and Jackson Ewell, they need to be starting. Okay, well, two of those three guys play in the MLS, so you think they're ready to start for the men's national team, but then you're also going to say, well, they should be playing in other leagues to get better experience. Like I don't know how to reconcile those two thoughts. So
Right.
U.S. soccer fans, let's try to be consistent here. But the fact of the matter is, these are our U23 guys. These are the young developers, and hey, they could be playing in one of those top 5 leagues in Europe within the next couple of seasons based on their performance here. Now, looking at the attack, Jeremy Ebobisse of the Portland Timbers, someone also who's gotten some USMNT call-ups. Jesus Ferreira of Dallas, Jonathan Lewis, the exciting young player from Colorado, and Ulises Yanez from Wolfsburg over in Germany. Again, another guy who people want to see in the red, white, and blue senior team. And then finally, your guy, Mike, Sebastian Bofo Saucedo gets called up as one of the 5 forwards on the roster. So I think the midfield is going to be where the U.S. can really excel. If they play a more possession-oriented game, I think it really works for these guys. And we've seen players like Pomical be able to pick apart passing. Jordi Mihailovic is doing great with Chicago, finding service of his strikers there. What are you looking for on this roster?
Yeah, for me, it's can the midfield translate into good service to the attack? You've got some talent there in the attack. There's nobody that, at least in my opinion, that lights the world on fire other than possibly Lainez and Saucedo. They could kind of jump into that category with a good tournament, but they're not quite there yet. And I'm interested to see how that goes. As far as the attack goes, we get the young kids up. Sargent, Weah. There's a couple pieces, but that's been the weak spot of the United States men's national team for how long, right? And so they've got to. I'm really interested to see how that translates. If the midfield, obviously, there's tons of talent in that midfield. If they can really get good service into those forwards and make the forwards better and make them excel, it could be a good tournament for the U.S. youth national team, as well as for the growth of the players for the senior team as well.
Absolutely. And just one other thing, like you were saying, like, well, all they got to do is make the finals and they qualify. Well, let's not undersell that a little bit too much. The Olympic qualifying out of CONCACAF, out of North America and the Caribbean, you only get 2 teams in. And it's typically Mexico and then whoever makes a good run, whether it's the U.S., Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, or Jamaica, whoever it could be at that time. So it's not easy to qualify for the World Cup in the CONCACAF region just because of the number of qualifiers you're getting and really kind of the overall. I think there's only, maybe like 16 teams in the tournament. It's not a huge field like the World Cup. So it's difficult to qualify out of CONCACAF, but the United States should be doing it.
Yeah, but to counter that, look at maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was what were your thoughts of CONCACAF soccer? It was Mexico and the United States, right? They were both right here. Honduras, Costa Rica, all these other clubs were down here. It was Mexico, United States, dead even. Now that's gone. And the fact that even you were saying, it's kind of hard to get there. It's always going to be Mexico and somebody else. Well, why isn't it, and why can't it be United States and somebody else, right? So I think that's kind of the mentality that's kind of come over U.S. soccer over the past, 6, 7 years, especially really took it into full force once they missed the World Cup in 2018. But that's the kind of mindset that needs to go away. U.S. has to start being that number one in CONCACAF right there with Mexico, if not overtake them now.
No doubt about it. I mean, just pointing out just the numbers and the odds, you're only getting 2 teams in.
Right.
And even worldwide, though, at the U23 level, there's a lot more parity than there is at the senior national team level.
Oh, absolutely.
So that also has to be taken into account where, hey, there could be this great 20-year-old in Costa Rica who kind of runs through qualifying and helps Costa Rica get there, but then he might not develop into a senior team player, might have an injury or something or whatever. So while I think from a senior level, it needs to be the U.S. and Mexico and everybody else. At the U23 level, I hope that's where it goes, but just knowing the odds and knowing the trend of youth soccer, I'm not gonna take it to the bank. I'm not gonna take it to BetMGM or anything like that. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Right.
The schedule there, March 20th, U.S. plays Costa Rica. March 23rd, they play the Dominican, and then for whatever it's worth, U.S. is playing Mexico on March 26th. So that could be kind of a cakewalk game if both teams have already clinched it, or if But it is U.S. Mexico. There's no such thing as a friendly, right?
That's right.
So those games are all on Fox if you guys are interested in watching, and I think you would be. So Mike, you got any other headlines, notes, anything you want to cover? Or with
Nope,
that, we can head into a quick break and hear a word from our sponsors, and then on the other side, we are going to talk all things MLS Week 2.
All right, we are back from break. Thank you again to our sponsors for letting us do what we do here at Sons of a Pitch Soccer, an American soccer podcast. Let's get right into some of these MLS games from past week. But I got my buddy here who is kind of sick. This is my son, Tom. He wanted to say hi to everybody out there. Tom, say hi.
Hi.
Say thanks for listening and make sure to subscribe. No?
Nope.
Okay. Get your butt back over there. All right. So now with that out of the way, let's get right into
take care of the family, man.
He's been sick, so him and his sister have been downstairs in lockup with me all day long. So no fun there. March 7th, Saturday, New England Revolution hosted the Chicago Fire. That was the first game of the weekend. Nick, I didn't get a chance to watch this one. I was out of the house. Didn't get a chance to watch it. What happened in that one?
Well, it was a 1-1 draw, and it was like neither team wanted to win it type of thing. We had a similar play out to Chicago's woes from last season, where they missed a couple early easy opportunities to really take a 1 or 2 goal lead early on. But I will say it was an excellent goal by the Fire. Mihailovic played a beautiful cross in. Jonathan Bornstein gets a head on it, flicks it far post. Mihailovic to Bornstein. You ever think you would say that in covering any MLS game ever?
Nope.
But New England, to their credit, they get one back, and oh man, at the dying seconds of the game, New England misses a sitter from maybe a yard out. Just the ball kind of was bouncing in, and the striker just got his foot under it enough to lift it up and over the goal. It was just, you saw the sheer horror and I forget who it was, on the New England player's face when he missed it. Like, he probably felt about 2 inches big at that point, because that was 3 points in the bag, but that's how the game ended. Kind of a fairly balanced affair between the two squads here, and it's too bad because this was kind of an old rivalry back in the early days of MLS, when you had New England and Chicago always fighting for playoff spots and advancing. So I'd love to see New England and Chicago develop both their individual squads in this rivalry once again. Now the next game up also ended in a 1-1 draw. Real Salt Lake hosted the New York Red Bulls. Mike, do you have any thoughts on a Red Bulls team who's trying to find an identity, and a Salt Lake team who's just trying to prove their last couple of years haven't been a fluke?
It's a good result for the Red Bulls. They end up with a draw. It's kind of like a draw that felt like a loss, though, with Real Salt Lake scoring that game-tying goal in stoppage time. But overall, when you step back from that, a draw on the road is good business. I mean, we've talked about it. We are big proponents of that on this show, and I know a lot of these team managers are, and teams feel the same way we do. If you can get 1 point on the road, it's a good result. And so you kind of have to step back for that with that one. But other than that, Real Salt Lake, I really don't know what to think about them. They've got some talent. They just kind of seem to always be in that same spot, right? They're never a big time MLS Cup contender, but they're never a bottom of the league type of team. They're just kind of in that middle range. Yeah, they might make the playoffs, they might not kind of place, and they seem to be back in that same spot again this year.
Moving on to the next game, we have Dallas and Montreal, again, playing to a draw, this time 2-2. We mentioned it in the first half of the show. Rudy gets the 2 goals for Montreal in his revenge game. I don't see it like that. That's totally a media makeup, because when he scored his goals, he did the absolute right thing. He went to his teammates, gave him hugs, gave him 5, and that was it. He wasn't whooping it up. He wasn't making a big deal about it, especially being at Dallas, his former club. So credit to Rudy for having a touch of class there, both for the goal scoring and the celebrations. But 2 things stick out to me in this game, Mike. We have the Cobra, Zdenek Ondrasik, pulling one back in the 83rd and then assisting Ricardo Pepi in the 96th. Late goals again. Do you think this is just like early season legs? Like the defense just can't keep up with some of these attacks late in the game? Or are they breaking down? Like you see it in CCL, you're seeing it in the early MLS games.
Yeah, I don't know. One side is in better shape than the other. I mean, how do you boil that one down when you start thinking about it that way? It's really weird. I don't know what to make of it, but yeah, there's a lot of goals towards the end of the games. So surprising as that might be, I don't know. Maybe it is the defense just isn't quite up to snuff, for where they would be a couple months into the season. But that's the only thing I can think of.
And the other headline that really probably shouldn't have been much of a headline was major international star Eden Hazard, formerly of Chelsea and now with Real Madrid, was at this game. He was in Dallas, and some people are like, oh my gosh, Hazard's going to come to the MLS. He's scouting it out a bit. He's taking time. No, he's there for surgery. He's having an operation on his ankle in Dallas, and decided to take the opportunity to take in an MLS game. So Hazard is not coming to the MLS anytime soon, if at all. Let's just nip that in the bud right there.
Okay.
Next game up, DC United gets 3 points against Inter Miami FC at home, 2-1 victory for the district. This was a game that was marred by some controversy. DC United, though, ends up getting the 3 points. I think it was kind of deserved for them. But the biggest thing was a Roman Torres dog-so red card. The ball kind of bounces up, and he handles it. According to the referees, he knocks the ball down with his arm to prevent the DC striker from having a one-on-one with the goalkeeper. That sequence of play was continued, leading to a Miami goal. But then, upon further review, VAR, they saw that Roman Torres handled the ball. They said it was an intentional handball, and therefore it nullified the goal that they scored, and then gave him a red card. They went down to 10 men, and then DC comes in and puts 2 goals in shortly thereafter. So it was just a crazy sequence of events. Watching the replay, I don't know if there's enough there to actually say that he committed an intentional handball or denied an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. Yeah, he kind of moves his arm toward the ball. It was kind of at an awkward angle. Mike, I don't know if you saw the replay of this one and what your thoughts are on it, but a lot of people are saying it can't be a denial of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity because the goalie was still on his box. He was still there. It's not like this was the last man on an open goal, but I don't know how much that comes into the analysis.
Well, I think as far as dog-so comes into play, it's the last defender back, not necessarily the goalie. So the goalie's separate from that. At least that's the way I've always.
Situation. It's a goal scoring opportunity, not a goal.
Right. So I here's my thoughts on it, and what is it wasn't clear enough to me to rewind and take away another goal like that. That's one of the biggest issues with VAR is, and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it is just it's horrible because you get some type of play that happens, and then 2 minutes later, however long it was after that, the team that then is getting penalized scores, and now you wipe away that play that had nothing to do with the supposed handball dog on the other end. It's really, really hard for that, for teams to swallow, to have a goal taken away like that.
Yeah.
So you got to be 100% right. And there were a few calls, like in the Toronto game, which we'll get to. One was spot on, and the other one was not. And you got to be more consistent with this, and it's for a clear and obvious error. It's got to be clear and obvious. And to me, that one wasn't. To most people, it wasn't. So you got to be careful with that. Especially, there should be an extra level of carefulness when you are talking about another goal being scored and rewinding the clock by 2 minutes and things like that. So,
absolutely. And if you're going to go rewind all of that, I mean, are you adding all that back in extra time? Like, how is that being accounted for? How's that being made up for with the officiating crew, the fourth official? And really, in this particular game, it underscored a great performance by Inter Miami. Like, they looked good. They did not look like the expansion team. I mean, Robbie Robinson was all over the place that first half, and it's just unfortunate that they couldn't get the win. But, after that red card, the game flipped, and it was all DC. So DC walks away with the 3 points there. Next game, as you alluded to, TFC get the 1-0 home win over New York City FC. Mike, your impressions on this one?
Yeah, it was a fun game to watch, especially as a TFC fan. I did we'll be starting some live commentary up here this week. The plan is, hopefully, depending on, if kids aren't still sick and whatnot, hoping to do the Atlanta United Club America CONCACAF Champions League game on Wednesday night as a live commentary. So I did a little bit of a test run from my personal account, and it was a hell of a game. Especially Toronto really played well. I was surprised with New York City. They brought a full-on starting 11. Every single player was out there for New York City, and honestly, I was a bit surprised. You've got Tigres in a couple days, and you're playing your full starting 11 in the MLS game on the road. So interesting from that perspective, but it was all TFC in the first half. They did, speaking of the VAR, TFC scored a goal. VAR comes in, happens to be this the young kid Achara's first ever goal in his debut, and VAR comes out and takes it away because he was offside. And rightly, it was clear and obvious he was offside. So that's the kind of stuff. Okay, it's clear and obvious. If the fans of that team can say, yeah, he was offside, then it should be used. If it's, really, really close, it shouldn't be used. Then a little bit later on in the first.
Well, hey, just to say, too, for offside, I don't think they're using the clear and obvious standard. I mean, he either is or he isn't offside based on the technology provided. So I don't know how much clear and obvious gets put into an offside call, if any.
No, you got a point. So then there's another instance of VAR was they're playing, and a penalty shout was there from TFC. James Sands kind of stops and sticks his leg out and his knee out to the side, and then kicks the Toronto FC player in the shins as he goes by him with the ball. Doesn't get the ball, anything. It's clearly in the box. The referee, Ted Uncle, who likes to call penalties, lets it go and doesn't call a penalty. Next whistle, they go to VAR.
So he did the right thing. Uncle did the right thing in this case. Let the play go and then review it.
Right. So then they go to review it, and he says, nope, no penalty. I mean, this was clear as day. It was a penalty. There was no question about it. Check out the replay if you haven't seen it. If anybody says it's not a penalty, I'll bet you we'll have to go to debate on that one, because it was clear as hell. So anyway, VAR is it's a work in progress still, and it will be until the next generation is just used to having it. But then to skip all the way ahead towards the end of the game, it looked like it was going to be a 0-0 draw, and TFC Achara gets his goal in the first game. The guy was all over the field. I mean, he had a wonderful, wonderful game. The preseason, he had three goals in 3 games in the preseason, got that first team contract. comes out in the 4-4-2 with Josie Altidore, was running all over the field. The energy this kid had was amazing, and he was the difference maker. 1-0, Toronto gets the win, gets the 3 points, and New York City, outside of about 10-15 minutes in this one, really didn't look to have much in the tank. So surprising from New York City, they go down to 10 men and lose to Columbus last in the opening week. Now lose to Toronto, two good Eastern Conference teams. You can't take too much out of it, and they're in CCL. But hopefully they'll turn it around sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, and I figure that's why they probably brought their starting 11 to Toronto, is because they know that they need points against Toronto. Those are going to come back come the end of the year in the standings. And as far as VAR goes, maybe Ted Uncle's got a little bit, I don't want to call it age bias, but experience bias. Like, he's been around enough where he could be thinking, I didn't call it during the run of play, and I probably would have never called it during the run of play, so it's probably not clear and obvious. I don't have to award it. Whereas maybe the next generation of officials, or a lot of the new younger pro referees, which there's a need for them as the league expands, as games and tournaments expand, and all this sort of things, maybe they will say, look, I can rely on VAR as my second set of eyes, and maybe a lot of other referees would have awarded it. We don't know what's going through Ted Uncle's mind. That's one possible explanation of it.
Could be.
Next game on the slate was Atlanta United hosting FC Cincinnati. I don't think anyone thought FC Cincinnati would come in and snatch a result despite Joseph Martinez being unavailable and out with his ACL tear. I know I wasn't in that camp, and Atlanta proved me right. They had 58% possession. They had 4 shots on target, so maybe not as many shots, quality opportunities as they would have liked, but they find the back of the net, get a 2-1 victory. Any takeaways on this one, Mike, other than, Atlanta is adjusting to life without Joseph?
Well, I think Cincinnati played well. Obviously not good enough to win, but they did play decent. So the stats-wise, they were there. They did have a lot more shots than Atlanta. However, the shots on target were even. Possession was in Atlanta's favor. That's always going to happen in the Benz. But Cincinnati, I think they'll be a good team once they kind of get a little bit more time together and get a coach, right? A new coach comes in that's going to play kind of the same system that's going to be similar to Ron Jan's, obviously, not similar in the views that he shared and had, to get him fired. But, to resign.
Talking tactics.
Strictly tactics, right? That so that these signings don't go to waste. Because I think you see that a lot of times you see a new coach come in and it's not his system, it's not his players, and they kind of falter, and then they get rid of everybody, and then he's already a year and a half in, and now he's got his guys, but then they have 3 bad games, and they're like, well, he's been around for a year and a half or 2 years, fire him, he's not getting the results, and then they fire him, and then you just go through this cycle constantly. So bring somebody in that these guys can work with and see what happens, and if not, completely clean house at the end of the year and do it over again. But I think they'll be decent. I think they'll be all right. They've got some good talent. So I thought they played okay watching the game. So,
and here's your trivia too out of this game. Atlanta United now holds all of the top 10 attendance records for the MLS. They have the top 10 most attended games by numbers of attendees. So congrats to Atlanta United.
There you go.
No small feat. Moving on to the next game, you had San Jose hosting a much improved Minnesota United team. I did not expect this scoreline, Mike. I don't think I expected 5 goals in this entire game, let alone a 5-2 Minnesota victory. What do you take away from this other than Mateus Almeida is just frustrated?
Minnesota United's really, really good. That's what I take away from this. No, I mean, this. You look at Minnesota; they went on the road and beat up on Portland. That was a surprise to me, that 3-1 victory in Portland. Then the next week they go to San Jose and completely dominate the game to win 5-2. I don't know what else to take out of this. I mean, Almeida's going to be frustrated, but Minnesota's a damn good team. Really good team. This Luis Amarilla is looking really good. I can't wait to see how he ends up at the end of the year as far as how many goals he's come out and said he's going to score 25. I can't doubt him. I think he's probably going to do it, judging by how he's played so far this season. So Minnesota looks really good, and San Jose, again, they're just I think they need a little bit more. They've got a decent 11, but they just need a little bit more to get them over the hump and be a consistent playoff team.
Yeah, the style that Almeida wants to play maybe doesn't lend itself to consistency. I mean, they could come out and win their next 3-4 games 4-0, but then they're going to lay an egg like they did in this game. So, but he did try to shake things up. He made 2 halftime substitutions, bringing in Shea Salinas and Cade Cowell for Nick Lima and Danny Hosen. So, not a fan of how some of his big name players are playing. So we'll see how that ends up affecting San Jose going forward. Meanwhile, Minnesota got to keep doing what you're doing. Another high scoring affair. This was my game of the week. Sporting Kansas City hosting the Houston Dynamo. Now Houston came off a pretty good, a good motivation game, a feel good game. They host LA Galaxy, the it team, the best player in the league, the rejuvenated Galaxy, who I thought would be playing a lot better, and they hold them to a 1-1 draw. And then they go over to Sporting Kansas City and get thumped 4-0. And a night where Johnny Russell doesn't score and Kansas City still gets 4 goals, that's just an amazing offensive performance by SKC. You know, Polito influenced that entire first half. He was winning battles. I mean, he scored, but even if he wasn't scoring, he was winning battles, drawing the defense. Houston was out to maul him. He was able to fight off defenders. And then Gadi Kinda has just continued his form from week 1, gets the goal, and just continues to be a motor for Sporting Kansas City. On the flip side, in my opinion, Houston's defense needs some improvement. Like they had lost some marks, they had lost some runners. They weren't able to take a turnover and turn it into offense. They kind of didn't know where to go with it whenever they did get turnovers. And Mauro Manotas, we've always said, has been the key to Houston. He was frustrated early. He's yelling at officials. He's yelling at opposing players. He's throwing his hands up and stomping around. Like, he has to get his emotions under control. Otherwise, he's never going to be a great player in this league. He's a talent. He's going to do well for Houston. But if he wants to elevate his game and Houston as a team, he's got to keep his emotions in check and focus it the way it needs to be. So that was my game of the week. That was a game I watched start to finish and regretted the next morning because it was a late game. But I definitely enjoyed that one, Mike.
Yeah, that was my, if you check out my picks and predictions video on YouTube, that was my guarantee of the week for Sporting Kansas City to beat Houston. I had no doubt in my mind in that game, seeing, even with Houston's 1-1 draw against the Galaxy, and we'll get to the Galaxy later, I kind of had a feeling about that after watching that first week matchup and seeing Sporting Kansas City go into Vancouver, who's a decent team, see the LA Galaxy game we'll be talking about shortly. And, Sporting Kansas City crushed them. And going home, that is one of the better atmospheres in MLS at Children's Mercy Park. People don't really think of that very much. They always kind of think Seattle, Portland, Toronto, Atlanta. Those are the kind of the places where people think, and they kind of skip over Sporting Kansas City, and they really shouldn't, because that is one of the best atmospheres in the league, period. So I had that one as a lock. There was no doubt in my mind, and they came out and they just laid a beat down on them and made me look good in my picks and predictions. So, hey, all right, I'll take it.
So next game up, Colorado Rapids beat Orlando City 2-1. I did not get a chance to watch this game, Mike, but I will tell you, you had a couple of good goals by Eunice Nomley and Drew Moore. Again, your guy Drew Moore there, 90th minute late goal, gets the winner for Colorado Rapids there. So an excellent result for them. Once again, Orlando struggling to secure points on the road.
It's got to touch on that one. Colorado, another stoppage time victory for them. So really exciting times for the Rapids. They're looking good. And Orlando, I was one of my friends that is an Orlando City season ticket holder. He is he put his feelings out there on Facebook the other night, and it was not pretty. It's ugly down there in Orlando. The ownership group is not is turning the fans away. They've got a strong fan base there, but it's been pretty ugly, and they're getting tired of the poor results. And I think I told him, hey, you got to give it some time. Oscar Pereira is a good coach, but it's frustrating down there, and I get it. It's kind of like TFC all over again. TFC, after about 6 years in the league, when they hadn't made the playoffs, it was bad. The front office was constantly getting crap. The fans were going away. They were only, at that time, BMO Field only held 20,000, and they were, they were maybe drawing 12, 13,000. They weren't filling it up because the fans were done. They were pissed off about it. And you're kind of seeing the same thing in Orlando, and hopefully things will start to turn around in Orlando like they did in Toronto. But that I had to throw that in there. So thanks, Tim, for the conversation there in Orlando. So moving along to the LA Galaxy and the Vancouver Whitecaps. This is a game where you're thinking the Galaxy, their home opener, they've got Chicharito, that Oz, he's going to be so amazing. And yeah, they lost to Vancouver 1-0. The team that got blown out by Sporting Kansas City in Vancouver last week. I think is it panic time for the Galaxy? It might be a little early for that.
You know what? Let's push the button. Let's push the panic button. You've got Chicharito, the biggest name ever to come to MLS. All this other stuff. He has not scored in any of his preseason games, I don't think, and he hasn't scored in 2 MLS games, and the Galaxy are 0-2. Instead, the Galaxy, I saw some stuff on social media from Galaxy fans like, "Dear Chicago, why did you ever rely on Alexander Katai? He's terrible." Like, Galaxy fans have already turned on Katai. I also don't know why Sebastian Legit was not starting this game. Like, he's supposed to be one of your best players. I don't understand it. Lots of questions coming out of Carson over there in California. So, I don't know what the Galaxy are going to do. And I think, hit the panic button. You're the LA Galaxy, 5-time MLS Cup champion, founder, trendsetter, all of that. Hit the panic button 2 games into the season. Go for it.
Yeah, it's scary from that perspective. I mean, everybody was really high on Chicharito. And go back, listen, 6, 7, 8 episodes back. That's not something we were echoing. I definitely felt as if it's not going to be the great signing everybody thought it was going to be. And there's still time. He could turn out to be a pretty good signing, but it's not looking good because he's not even getting involved in the play. It's not like he's getting his chances and he's just not burying them. I mean, he's non-existent out there. So Vancouver, Toss St. Ricketts, near and dear to my heart as a TFC fan. I miss Toss. He's a hell of a player.
2 former TFC players with game-winning goals, man.
Yeah. I'll tell you, we know how to. We get some good players, So look, Toss, great goal. Great celebration as well. So good on Vancouver, and let's see if they can keep that roll going. Now, Seattle Sounders and the Columbus Crew. This one was a really good game to watch. I had picked Columbus in my picks and predictions as my underdog of the week, and it was looking really good for me through about 60 minutes or so. And then a penalty kick was given to Seattle. And then, Nick, you put something in the notes about that, so why don't you take it from here?
Sure. So it actually was in the 79th minute. Raul Ruiz was awarded a penalty kick, and the Columbus goalkeeper actually saved the initial shot. Eloy, it looks like he read it perfectly, dove to the correct corner, parried the ball away. Everyone was pumped up. But upon further review, to use the NFL phrase again, VAR went back and reviewed the play, alerted the head ref who took a look. Turns out that the Columbus keeper, Eloy, actually jumped off of his line about just a moment before Ruiz struck the penalty shot. So he was about a yard in front of the line and then was able to dive. So you never know if that's going to actually affect it, but by rule, he was off the line. You need to keep 1 foot on the line at the time the ball is struck. Seattle gets awarded a do-over, essentially, and Ruiz finds the back of the net. So that was the equalizer. So I guess my thought on it is, he didn't follow the rules. The rules are there in place to give an equal opportunity both to the goalie and to the shooter. He was off of his line. Good call by VAR. Mike, do you agree? Do you think this is a good use? Should VAR be judging this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rule. and it's on penalties, which VAR covers. So, although I didn't like the result, as Columbus fans are probably with me, just because I picked them to win, but no, it is the right call. He was off the line, that was clear and obvious, and he was even off the line the second time. So. He apparently that's what he does. But overall, good. I can't complain about it, and fans shouldn't either.
Next game on the slate: Portland wins at home against Nashville, 1-0. Diego Valeri, man, he's not their DP, he's not their star player supposedly anymore, but he finds the back of the net in the 12th minute, and that's all Portland needs to hold on to the 3 points against expansion side Nashville, who, as we said, is now 0-2 and maybe not as much optimism around him. Diego Chara gets another yellow card. I think that kind of goes without saying. Our guy Daniel Lovitz for Nashville gets a yellow card himself. The only way he can get involved in the game, apparently. And Portland thankfully gets 3 points to kind of maybe ease a little of the nerves of the Timbers army up there.
Yeah, without a shot on goal, or maybe even a shot from the 24th minute forward for Portland. So not a good showing for Portland, but they do get the result over the expansion side Nashville. Last game of the weekend, Los Angeles Football Club, LAFC, hosting Philadelphia Union in an absolute barn burner. This game was awesome. I actually watched it this morning. I fell asleep at halftime and watched the rest of it today, and it was awesome. Just every time Philly would go up, LAFC would tie it up within minutes, and it was just a really exciting game to watch. So
you make me feel terrible because I went to bed at halftime of this game, and I'm like, I just can't stay up. I got work. It's going to be a long week. Like, I mean, how many goals can I miss? Four goals. That's what I missed in the second half. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So, hey, Nick, I'm telling you, I got that YouTube TV, and you can the library. All MLS games are saved to the library, so just go on there and watch it, man. It's there for you.
I guess that's what I'm gonna have to use, man. Thanks. But hey, do you think is this an early MLS Cup matchup? Is that what we just saw?
I don't think
so. Is that crazy for me to say that?
I think it might be a little bit crazy, but it might not be. Philadelphia looked good, but that good? I mean, they did just lose to Dallas last week. They probably need a little bit more as far as signings go. They do need to spend a little bit more money, which we've talked about that in the past, and with the moving of Bedoya down to a TAM contract. So I think that might be coming. But overall, LAFC just doesn't look like LAFC. They really don't. And the reason why I say that is they have the talent. They are that good. And what I noticed in this game was they would go down a goal to Philadelphia because they were getting lackluster. They weren't playing hard, whatever it was. I don't know. I can't really pin it exactly on anything like not playing hard. But then the minute Philadelphia would score, they'd come out like gangbusters and go and score a goal. And then they'd loosen back up and say, oh, okay. So I think LAFC is that good. And I don't know if they're just playing down to the competition. I don't know if they're getting ready for Cruz Azul on Thursday night. I don't know. But they just haven't looked like themselves other than that one game against Lyon in LA in the Champions League. So it'll be interesting to see. I know they're missing a lot of strikers right now with the injuries, but they still get a decent result when you figure that they're probably prioritizing Champions League, even though they did play a fairly full strength team. So it was a great game. But yeah, I think it pumped the brakes on an early MLS Cup projection there.
Absolutely. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all for tuning in once again. Thanks to our sponsors, Donovan Food Brokerage and Nice Premium Iceland Pure Spring Water. We appreciate your funding, your sponsorship, and your support. But most of all, we appreciate all of our listeners, whether it's on YouTube, podcast, or come checking out the website. Thank you, everyone. Keep a lookout for Mike's picks and predictions coming out later on in this week. Keep a lookout for some of the live videos and commentary that he'll be doing over the course of some of these MLS games. Let us know what else you want to think. But again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.